Hey y'all, listen, early parenthood is a wild ride. There's so many new things that you're experiencing and learning that some level of anxiety is to be expected. But if you layer in a traumatic birth on top of that, it can feel like learning to drive a car for the first time in the middle of a hurricane while an earthquake is happening underneath you. And if you've been through a traumatic birth, maybe you can relate to that feeling of, yeah, it's intense and it's a lot of really intense things going on at once. And that's some of what I experienced in my own story of having a traumatic birth. This is part three and the final part of a video series on my own experience of a traumatic birth as a therapist who specializes in trauma. Part one really focused on what turns an adverse or a challenging experience into a trauma and what can help protect us from those experiences becoming traumas. Part two, I talked about the hospitalization and the different practices and ways of supporting our nervous systems that can help us when we're in the middle of a trauma or a challenge. And in this part, I'm going to be focusing a little bit on the transition into parenthood after experiencing a trauma like a traumatic birth. If you're new here, my name is Lauren. I am a licensed therapist and I specialize in somatic therapy, trauma, anxiety clients who describe themselves as being in survival mode, and working with couples who find that painful past experiences are impacting the ways that they show up in their current relationship. And some months ago, I went through my own trauma. Long story short, I had a lot of complications during the birth of my son. I wound up being in the hospital for 5 days. 2 of those days I was in the ICU. I had 2 surgeries on the same day, woke up intubated, all of this sort of stuff. It was just definitely a lot and very overwhelming for my nervous system. And I'm sharing what has helped me to get through that experience and heal so that I can equip you with some tools and understandings that can hopefully help you in your own healing journey in building resilience and figuring out how to move forward. The impacts of a traumatic birth don't end once you have finally made it out of the hospital. It can feel like, if I can just make it out, then the trauma is over. But in many ways, the impact of the trauma begins just as you're entering this chapter of the first days and weeks of parenthood. Going into this experience, I had a pretty realistic set of expectations for early parenthood. I expected a wide range of emotions, sadness, joy, exhaustion, excitement, late nights, long days, a lot of trial and error in figuring out how to take care of a new human being. And instead, I got a lot of those challenges plus 2 weeks of really being too physically unwell to be able to do the most basic functions of parenting. I couldn't really bend over to do things like changing a diaper. I couldn't hold my son for more than 5 minutes at a time without feeling extremely fatigued because I was still recovering. And physically, I was really struggling, but on a deeper level, mentally and emotionally, I was struggling. Even though I had physically left the hospital, parts of my mind and my emotions and my spirit was really still stuck in that experience. And that's one of the deep impacts of trauma. One of the things that trauma does is it takes that our survival mind and it almost gets it stuck in time, where even if the situation has changed, our survival mind is still saying, am I safe? Is this going to happen again? Have I really escaped the danger? I still need to be on high alert to make sure that the danger is not going to pop up around any given corner. What that looked like for me was crying multiple times a day whenever I experienced any little physical symptom, from a little pain to a headache. I became extremely afraid that I was going to have to go back to the hospital. I was on high alert and very anxious. I was afraid to sleep, and then when I did drift off to sleep, I would startle awake, and sometimes I would feel so nervous that I felt like my mind was kind of separating from my body. And as a trauma therapist, I knew that these were trauma symptoms. I could name them, I could title them, and this was just not the beginning of parenthood that I had at all imagined. Now, fortunately for me, I have a spouse, a partner who's very, very supportive. And I had the support of family around me who were willing to pitch in and help while I was really unwell. And that's a major privilege. The challenge with that is I felt extremely guilty then for accepting or needing the help. It was like everyone was doing more and everyone was doing more for my baby than I was doing. And when I was kind of in that state, I felt broken. I even was tempted to do things that I wasn't physically ready to do yet, just to feel like I was capable and contributing and like whatever happened wasn't as bad as it was because I was getting back to normal. What helped me with that is identifying those feelings and beliefs that I was broken as being the voice of trauma. Trauma often has a voice and speaks to us inside of our minds or inside of our bodies and says things like, you are broken, you are unworthy, it is your fault, you need to be afraid right now, right? So that was the trauma talking. And trauma often talks in the form of shame and or guilt. Yes, I had a lot of physical and mental healing that I needed to do. No, that did not mean that I was broken. It meant that my body had been through and survived a lot. The system was doing its best to protect me from something really overwhelming that happened and needed time to sort of rewire, re-regulate, and make meaning of that. None of that meant that I was broken, but it did mean that I needed time and space for healing fully and deeply. And if I prioritize that healing, I knew just from my experience with clients and seeing it so many times before, I knew if I prioritized that healing, then I would be able to be better for me, for my son, for my spouse, for my family, for all of us. Now, the trial and error and ups and downs of being a new parent do already come with some anxiety built in. But a traumatic birth can take that anxiety and that fear and it can crank it up to 100, often adding in vivid imagery of what has just gone wrong or what could go wrong in the future. All of a sudden, your nervous system has these really automatic stress responses because it was just responding to the scary thing that happened. And so, small things or medium things can bring up big reactions from the body, like a pounding heart, sweating palms, feeling kind of faint, stomach aches, all of those sorts of things. For me, my nervous system had really big automatic responses to any physical symptom that made me think that I might need to go back to the hospital because I wasn't healing properly. So something small like a pain in my stomach would turn into an automatic nervous system response of that racing heart, that feeling nauseous, that my palms feeling sort of sweaty. And here's the tricky part. My logical mind knew, Lauren, that's probably not what's happening right now. This is probably just a stomach ache, but we'll see. But when your nervous system is really, really activated and when that trauma is triggered, it's almost like your body disconnects from your logical mind. Your logical mind is no longer in the driver's seat. It is that survival mind that is in the driver's seat now. So no amount of rational thinking alone can calm the body or calm the mind in the way that it needs to be calmed. Even though I can name exactly what was happening, somatic response, nervous system activation, thought spiraling, depersonalization, that didn't stop it. But you know what did help? It was things like breathing in patterns and ways that felt good to me. It was connecting with my internal resources, thinking deeply about a place that I had been recently that I really enjoyed, or my favorite blanket that had a texture that I absolutely loved. Putting ice on the back of my neck because it was a strong sensation and I could pay attention to that sensation. Focusing on things like if I was holding my son, his weight in my arms. These sort of somatic techniques and grounding techniques over time worked. They didn't make anything stop automatically, but they gave my nervous system these little anchors so that as the wave of anxiety came up and then eventually receded, I had something to hold on to carry me through. They gave me bits of relief. and that relief and that anchoring repeated over time helped me to experience those anxiety waves as being less intense. The good news is that with repetition, these sorts of practices can help your nervous system to learn how to go from calmer regulation to stress and back to calmer regulation again more and more easily. The bad news is that it takes a lot of time and energy. It can take minutes, it can take hours, it can take significant chunks of time and just even more energy during that time to repeat that process over and over again, which is what your nervous system needs. And when you're in the beginning of parenting, you would rather spend that time and energy bonding with your child, learning the ropes, figuring things out, resting, or just taking a moment to be. And that's okay. Your energy is having to go in this direction that you wish it didn't have to go into, the direction of just going from regulation to anxiety, back to regulation, regulation being triggered, back to regulation. You would rather your energy be going other places, and that is totally valid. But hold on to the reality that it won't always be this way. Every time you move through these emotions, every time you engage with your practices, you are getting one step closer to a time when you'll be able to find more ease around letting these emotions pass through, and when these emotions just won't show up with as much intensity as you heal, as you recover from the trauma. For me, with EMDR therapy intensives, somatic practices that I've learned over the years, and lots of support, I'm already really able to enjoy so much more of parenting, even while still healing, because of what I went through was a few months ago. Here's what I want you to take away from this. You will need help. Recovery will take time. Even when you're ready to more physically engage with your child and in parenting, trauma healing is very energy draining, not just emotional energy, but physical energy, and it needs to be a priority. So if help is available, take it and take that help unapologetically. If help is not available, first, my heart goes out to you. That's such a tough position to be in, but make finding that support a top priority. It might feel radical to ask for help or to try to engage others in supporting you, but here it is absolutely necessary. If you're ready to address unresolved trauma and you are looking for support and you live in California, please reach out. EMDR, brain spotting, somatic therapy, and even therapy intensives can help you to experience relief and healing sooner than you might think. If this video resonated with you, you are not alone. Healing is possible, recovering is possible, and it is worth the time and energy and care. Take really gentle care of yourself, and thanks for checking out this series.